sure on time.
Views and opinions are not necessarily that of BeyondTheStrange, host, guests, and affiliated.
You have everything. They're just balls of light, of light, of light, of light. There's a ghost in the house.
All right. Broadcasting live from the Napa Valley wine country, just outside the mystical Sonoma Mountains. This is Beyond the Strange. Thank you for joining us tonight. It is Monday, January 3rd, 2022, the year of our Lord. And man, what an amazing show we have for you tonight. First of all, I just want to say Happy New Year to everybody. And I really hope that everyone had some great holiday cheer and just some, lively times with the family, because that's what it's about. I mean, we've been through a lot with 2021, and I think a lot of people will agree with that. But it's good to see that, we have some great people, still out there doing what they need to do, talking about this stuff. We got some good stuff. Happy New Year, Jess Rogie, Dragon Rose, got Carl in there. How's it going, brother? Yeah, we got a great show, and I'm really stoked. This is going to be a really great show tonight. Tonight we will be speaking with Mark Fiorentino, and we're going to be talking about super relativity and a lot other stuff to go with that. So definitely don't want to tune out. If anything, call up a friend and tell them to tune in. We have a lot to talk about tonight. Also, after the first break, after the second break, we do have some open lines if you'd like to call in and talk with Mark. If you have any questions, we're going to be talking a lot about time travel, space travel, you name it. We got a lot of stuff to cover. So with that, let's get going. Please go to BeyondTheStrange.com. Register, get your free monthly newsletter to stay in the know for the show. Also, please follow the show on Twitter at Strange Days 2015. You can follow me, your host, Strange Dave, at Strange Dave 70. And you can also follow me now on the new Getter format. It's a new platform, and I just opened up a new account there. So that's at Dave Cruz 70. That's on Getter. So you want to check it out. It's going to be a fantastic platform. So follow us there. There is a official Beyond the Strange Discord channel, the Strange Chat Room. All you got to do is go to BeyondTheStrange.com. There's a tab at the top, and that'll get you hooked up to the Strange Chat Discord room. Make sure to subscribe to Beyond the Strange YouTube channel and Twitch channels. Please hit that like, follow, and subscribe button, and set your alerts to receive new notifications of videos and live streams. Please leave a nice comment during the live stream or after viewing the video. Okay, so just a few announcements really quick. Conspiracy Talk show host Dave Baker has passed away unexpectedly. I don't really know a whole lot of details. I know that he's had his show, the Kev Baker Show, and man, it's really, I know, Dragon Rose. Oh my gosh, it's very surprising and shocking that this happened, but Kev Dave Baker has passed away. I'm sure there's more details on his Facebook page. People are just putting a bunch of stuff on there. So you'll be missed. Our thoughts and prayers go out to his family and his loved ones. Rest in peace, Kev Baker. Russ Bailey has the night off and will return to co-host the show next week. Russ, he's busy doing all kinds of stuff. If he's not out there chasing ghosts, then he's doing something else, probably chasing UFOs. But he'll be back next week, and that'll be awesome. Next week, we will have abduction experiencer Les Velez on the show as well. That's on Monday, January 10th. And check out the calendar at BeyondTheStrange.com for more upcoming guests. All right. I think that's enough for that. Let's get to the show tonight. Author Mark Fiorentino has been obsessed with Einstein's unified field theory ever since hearing about it when he was 10. He worked for many years in the high-tech industry, including for IBM. Mark shares his views on how the universe really works based on his study and research on Einstein's unified field theory. Mark also discusses how the applications of Einstein's theory can be used to travel through space, renewable energy, and future technology. He will also talk about the connection to conspiracy theories, including UFOs, and the alien technology they use, as well as other controversial topics such as near-death experience revelations that are linked to the theory of super relativity. You can find more information about Mark at www.super-relativity.com. Everyone, please help me welcome for the first time on Beyond the Strange, Mr. Mark Fiorentino. Mark, thank you so much for joining us tonight. And it is a pleasure, sir, to have you and discuss this very interesting topic. As am I, and I'm sure the audience is just biting at the nails to find out what we're going to be talking about. So, first thing I'd like to, of course, just welcome you to the show, and we're going to have a really good conversation. It's just like we're talking on the phone or sitting on the couch having coffee. It's all good. So, that's what this is all about. So, first of all, Mark, I'd like to know what is your background? Where were you born? Oh, cool.
Later, Einstein passed away, and so that's where I came from. I have both my parents were Italian. Father was an immigrant here. My mother was born in Brooklyn, New York. Her parents are both Italian. So that's where I came from, but I live now in Central Florida. I'm happy to be here.
So from New Jersey to Florida, that's pretty amazing, from going from up to bottom.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. The weather is a lot warmer here. Very nice, very pleasant.
Fantastic. A lot of people moving to Florida. I noticed.
Yes, this county is one of the fastest growing counties in the country now, and it's not a well-known county. It's Polk County, and it's the construction is just unbelievable at this point. It's
Interesting.
getting very crowded here.
I have yet to visit Florida. One of these days, I plan on it, and I will look you up, my friend, whenever I'm out there.
That'll be nice.
Sounds
We'll
great.
have a nice lunch or dinner or something.
Sounds
It'll be
good.
good.
That'd be absolutely fantastic. So, Mark, right off the top, I got to ask you: do you believe in UFOs and ET?
Absolutely. Really, at this point, we all should know that as a fact for sure. I'm sure the government loves everybody with all the questions and wondering and waiting for them to officially announce something, but we really need to get beyond that. And there's so many sightings. There's been so many, in the millions now over the years, all over the world, continuously every day. Of course, they're here. There is an ET, many ETs, as just in this galaxy alone, there's enough planets with life on it. It's just overwhelming. And so this idea that we are alone in the universe, that's an antiquated old idea that needs to die because it's just nowhere close to reality. And so part of what I'm trying to do in this book is bring out the idea that there's much more going on in this universe, in this reality, than we experience here with our heads down, looking at, material things, who's going to win the Super Bowl or who's going to win American Idol. There's so much more to this universe, as you know, as a person who's investigating UFOs and Sasquatch and ghosts
And everything on my shirt.
spirits. The spirit realm in particular is a massive place. It's like infinitely large, I guess you could say.
Oh yeah.
As it turns out, I believe that there's many more universes and dimensions as well. And so we need to accept that and start opening our minds and allowing all this other stuff to get in and be more aware, raise our consciousness. So yes, I definitely am sure that there is alien entities out there, and I think for the most part they're friendly, but it's being portrayed one in some people not so, and other people, there's a lot of controversy there from the people who have been abducted.
Yes.
A lot of them claim that they're very helpful and nice and want to help humanity, and then there's some that say the opposite.
Yes, I have to agree with you. I feel that just like with any civilization, if you will, you have people who are the good people and the bad people, or you have takers and givers, however you want to put it, helpers and those who don't want to help so much. I feel that the same way is with ET, and I'm sure we've been visited, and probably most likely they are still here. We just don't see them, but we have seen their crafts, and it's just an amazing, interesting, and an important topic to talk about. So I know we're definitely gonna get into that. You got really interested in Albert Einstein at an early age. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, back when I was 10 years old, I was going to catechism class, preparing for confirmation and such.
Mhm.
And the nuns in that class asked us to go find a saint born on our birthday. Of course, this is 1964, 65 in that area, and there's no internet.
Mm.
So finding out stuff like that, it's not so easy. I asked my parents, and they didn't know of any saints born on my birthday. And then I went to the calendar. It's funny, I still remember looking at the calendar and seeing Albert Einstein's birthday on my date, March 14th. So I went to the Encyclopedia Britannica and read about Einstein, and I found it fascinating for some reason. Uh, and then I continued reading, and I stumbled across the unified field theory. And I thought that was the best idea I ever heard. And, it just resonated with me. And from that point on, I became a great lover of science, all the sciences, especially physics. So over the years, I kept reading books and biographies and autobiographies and so forth about Einstein and some of the other scientists of that era.
Mm.
I stuck with that era because they were on the right track. And there's a lot of history I went over during all those years and discovered some defects in the philosophy of physics that happened specifically in the year 1905. and moving forward from that time. And so that's how I got into it. Just basically, you could call it a fluke of fate, but a chance. But there's no accidents in this universe. I found that out for sure. And so I was meant to be guided to that, and realized that there's some greater mission that I had, and that's come out later on throughout my life experience. But that's how I got into it, and I never looked back. It was just something about reading about him and his theories intrigued me.
Hmm. Do you feel that it may have been a mistake of Einstein to share his theory of relativity because of the some of the stuff that has come from it, especially like with nuclear power and that kind of thing?
No, I don't think it was a mistake. In his time, he made great discoveries, but in
Hmm.
his time, the government and the forces
Mm.
were not going to suppress him. Whereas maybe now, he
Right.
might have gotten severely suppressed, and disinformation put out about him and so forth. Because what I put in my book, there's some things in there technology wise that I'm sure that the government doesn't want to get out, and so that worries me somewhat. But I feel duty bound to do this, because this is something I came into this world to do, and I'm committed to doing that. And so as for Einstein, I don't he did make one mistake, a very serious mistake in special relativity, and I go over that in detail in my book.
Okay.
But he did it based on some experimental results that were happening in that time. To save his theory, he rearranged the interpretation of special relativity. And to this day, everyone still has that wrong. But it's something I had to fix along the pathway. Other than that, Einstein was a brilliant man who I deeply admire, and I have great respect for. And I love the guy.
Much respect. Much respect to
Yes.
Albert Einstein, and he does a great meme too.
Yeah.
I love that. I love that meme of his. Pretty amazing. Um, so definitely, intrigued with Albert Einstein at a young age. Were there any other physicists that you were researching at the
Yeah.
time when you were learning about physics?
Yeah. Yeah. You see, I studied the physicists from like Newton's time forward to
Hmm.
Einstein's time. So there's five key physicists: Newton, Maxwell, Faraday, Lorentz, and Einstein. Those are the main guys that I built my theory upon, uh,
Hmm.
especially Einstein, who all I did was really extend general and special relativity just a little more. And as I researched it, I found that he was thinking some of the same ideas that I have, and I knew that because I started looking for these ideas. Surely he must have been researching, let's say, the cause of particle motion, and sure enough, in his unified field theory, because he's the only one I could ever find that was researching that. And
Right.
I thought, how could they not want to know how particles move? And how does a photon always go at the speed of light? And it's not slow either. It's 186,000 miles per second. How
Yeah.
does a particle manage that on its own without a jetpack or rockets? And it does, but modern day physics won't even talk about it.
Interesting.
And they work on the theory of kinematics, which basically is the branch of mechanics concerned with the motion of objects without reference to the forces which cause the motion. This is a deep flaw in modern day physics. And so my research was, hey, we have to figure out how particles move. and I discovered it eventually, and I call that mechanism the slip wave, and it's the cause of particle motion. And as it turns out, Einstein also was looking for it, and of course, I got excited the day I discovered that. In his unified field theory of gravitation and electricity in July 25th, 1925, the last two sentences say this. Now, this is his proposal for the unified field theory back in that time. At the very end, he says, "Nevertheless, I'm still far away from claiming the physical validity of the equations I derived. The reason for that is that I did not succeed in deriving equations of motions for particles yet." So he knew it too. I always strove to figure out and to watch and to learn what he was thinking, his model. That's what's important. That's where his equations come from.
Mm.
You have to have the right model, mechanical model, in order to derive the equations. Otherwise, it's just nonsense, which basically is quantum mechanics, because quantum mechanics, it doesn't tell you how things work. It's based wholly and entirely in probabilities. And since there is no such thing as a force of probability, it can't explain anything mechanical, really. So, and that's why you have all the weird interpretations that don't make any sense. And so that suggests that quantum mechanics is incomplete, as Einstein said.
Sure.
But that is critically important, the cause of particle motion. And I got into that and gave it a great deal of thought. And it came from the days mainly of Maxwell and Heaviside and those guys who actually tried to work on that problem. And Maxwell had great success. As a matter of fact, he came up with the equation that described how fast electromagnetism moves, a photon, which is C equals 1 over the square root of permittivity times permeability. When you do that and you calculate those numbers, you get the speed of light. Pretty amazing. That means Maxwell was onto something to get that solution. That's not by accident. So, and there's much involved in that, in the whole theory. Basically, I had to go back and rediscover the ether, which is what space is made of, which is a quasi-elastic solid. And I based the whole theory upon that, which Einstein believed in, Newton believed in, Maxwell believed in, and most certainly Lorentz believed in. These are top-notch scientists. All these guys couldn't be wrong. We made a big mistake in 1905, thanks to the Michelson and Morley experiment, which misguided everybody or took them all in the wrong direction.
Well, we definitely, well, I mean, we have a couple minutes before our first break. I definitely want to get into some more of what Einstein shows you, that, you know, we can connect the dots,
Yes.
Especially in the paranormal. And I don't want to say fringe, but I actually do want to say science, real science of space travel, time travel, a lot of, you know, theories that do relate to what we call UFOs or UAPs, and, you know, the ability for them to travel throughout space and time. So, you know, I definitely wanted to cover that. So we go ahead and we can take our first break right now. And when we come back, we'll get into some more super relativity with Mark Fiorentino. This is Beyond the Strange. I'm Dave Cruz. Don't go away. We'll be right back right after this. All right, welcome back, everyone. This is Beyond the Strange. I'm your host, Dave Cruz. Tonight, we are speaking with guest Mark Fiorentino. Mark's going to be talking more about super relativity. And you can find more information about Mark at www.super-relativity.com. His book, Master of Reality, is what we'll be discussing also in this second segment. And I just want to welcome back Mr. Mark Fiorentino. Mark, thank you again for joining us tonight.
You're welcome. Thank you.
So we last were talking about Einstein's theory and a lot about physics. Well, you were discussing that because I don't know any of that stuff. I'm not going to lie. But, it's definitely applicable to our reality for sure.
Oh, yes. It's very relevant. Oh, you want to know how things work. It's all a matter of basic mechanics.
Right.
That's sort of been why physics is so mysterious today is that quantum mechanics has made it so in a way you just can't understand it because it makes no sense. That, yeah, it confuses everybody and they shy away from it now. But the old time classical field theory makes sense. The theory of super relativity makes tremendous sense. The more you know about it, the more sense it makes, the more you think, how in the hell did we not figure this out decades ago?
Right.
And that's what's in my book. I painstakingly explain everything from the ether to all the mechanics that generate the origin of mass, gravity, and inertia, basically the unified field theory. And if you go to ResearchGate, I have 2 papers there where I presented the mathematical proof as well for the solution for the origin of mass, gravity, and inertia.
Let's talk a little bit about your book, or I'll let you talk about your book. And what was obviously Einstein was definitely what you were thinking about when you were writing the book. What else were you thinking about? Were you trying to find the answers to certain things like, speed of light and time travel, bending space and that kind of thing? Anything that applies to, our life? I know that we're going to discuss a near-death experience as well here pretty soon, maybe in the next segment. But what was going through your mind when you were writing this book?
Well, I started on the first day of my retirement. I think it was January 2nd, about 5 years ago. And I thought, well, I have all these ideas bouncing around my head for the last 45 years, spent countless hours at night doing mind experiments like Einstein used to do. I couldn't stop thinking about this stuff. I wanted to understand it, wanted to know. I was reading for so many years, hoping to find some physicist that would solve the problem of the unified field theory. But the more I read, the more I could see that nobody was even close. And it turned out to be, the person that I was waiting for turned out to be me. And I said, holy cow, let me write this all down because, I need something to do with my retirement. We'll just see how it goes. So I wrote the book.
Something to do. Definitely.
Yeah, and did tremendous amounts of research over a 4-year period it took me to write the book. So I kept digging away, and I had a very powerful tool that Einstein didn't have, which made it a big difference, a huge difference. I had the World Wide Web. I had the internet. So I was able to access documents from all over the world as far back as Newton's time to find out what they were thinking, to put together a theory that made sense. And it turned out I got all the information I needed and was able to make the connections, the links across time and bring it all up to date. And so, as I wrote the book, I'm thinking, there's a lot of good ideas here. And by the end of the book, I thought, this is pretty much a unified field theory. And then things happened which convinced me that it was actually correct. It wasn't just a lot of good ideas, it was the solution. And then that pushed me to go forward and do the papers afterward. Well, at least one of the papers. One of the other papers I did actually 4 years or 5 years before I wrote the book. I got this urge to solve this little problem, which basically, how fast do the quarks move inside of the neutron and proton? Why would some guy like who's fixing computers and stuff spend time doing that? I wonder to myself. But I wrote a program that took weeks to calculate, and I found that the quarks moving inside of the neutron and proton were moving at 99% the speed of light. And so I had this solution, and it turns out I needed that number to for the next paper.
Mhm.
So, I'm thinking to myself, that's bizarre that I would calculate and find the one number I needed so that I could complete the other paper, which I had no idea I was ever going to write. So there's a lot of synchronistic things going on here, and there's certainly a lot of connections that helped get me involved in this from the spiritual realm,
Okay.
through psychics and mediums and so forth, that predicted this day when I was only 19 years old.
Wow.
In a very vague way, they wouldn't give me any details, but they said there was going to be a great discovery made, and it's turned out to be true. And that prediction was made over 45 years ago and was reaffirmed by 5 more mediums all along the way as I went through life, and never going for this sort of stuff, going for typical problems that people might have, because
Right.
I personally believe in mediums. Are there fakes out there? Yes, of course. But they're now almost all of them are very good. You don't get into that business and survive unless you really have the gift.
That's true.
The ones that don't have the gift, you could tell by their impressions they're reading that they're just guessing at based on what questions you ask and whatever. But the ones that do have it, and I've been fortunate to work with some of the best in the world, have confirmed that what I'm doing here was meant to be, was part of my life plan. And so I feel that I need to complete this and finish this project. And there's still more to do, much more to do.
That's fascinating. I really hope that you do. I'm like on your side for sure. We have a quick question from Carl CMJ that's in the Twitch chat. Are we ever going to have ships equipped to handle flying at the speed of light? Or is this going to be a wormhole thing? I guess it's a 2-part question, or will either be possible within our lifetimes?
Yes, I believe they've already done it, and I've had evidence presented to me that the United States already has alien technology, UFO technology, faster than light technology, probably as well. Certainly anti-gravity.
Right.
And will we use wormholes? No, that won't work. It would be lethal, and it doesn't work as they think it does. The only way that we can really, that I know of, certainly this is entry-level technology for any civilization, what I'm about to describe, which is using the slipwave spatial bias drive, which is a drive it's a magnetic propulsion drive, and using magnetic field in motion causes space to be stretched. And that's what you need. So you need actually the opposite of a wormhole. You need an expansion of space, and the magnetic field is the way to do that. And you use a gradient field, and with the help of the magnetic field, you cause basically a bubble to form around the ships. And that's why the ships that we see, the UFOs that we see, are very basic geometries, very simple. The best geometry is a cylinder shape.
Right.
If you want to go, make a large ship that's safely goes beyond the speed of light. You have to use a slipwave spatial bias drive, form a gradient field. What I mean is at the front of the ship is a strong magnetic field, but each coil that goes around later on, around the cylinder in a parallel design as it moves toward the back of the ship, has more current strength. Each one as you go, stronger and stronger and stronger to the back of the ship where the magnetic field is huge. And this creates a bubble that pushes the ship through space, just in the same methodology as particles do and how they push themselves through space.
Mm-hmm.
So that's where I got the idea from, discovering that how particles work, then how they create their motion, which breathes life into the universe. Without it, this universe would go black in an instant. Particles have to move. Everything happens because of that. As Einstein said, nothing happens unless something moves. And that is a very deep statement.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
Yeah, because it's all about that. And in the theory of super relativity and unification of force and the cause of gravity comes about, gravity is caused by the accelerated motion of fundamental unbalanced charges. There's a lot of words I picked carefully in that sentence, but if you put them all together and you understand them, it's all about accelerated motion. And if you use a unbalanced charge, it causes a uniform motion, a uniform accelerated motion, a circular motion. And that is what causes gravity to be formed within the ether. Because as particles move like that, in this circular fashion, as inside of the neutron and proton, you will find, or what I discovered is, that causes the space in and around that particle to contract. So once I had this model, I spent a lot of time looking for Einstein to say the words contraction and gravity in the same sentence or the same paragraph. And I finally found it in a book by Amir Excel. And he confirms my model. He has the same model, which he got from Paul Ehrenfest, which is the Ehrenfest paradox, which Einstein then calls his happiest thought. Would you like to hear what happened?
I'd love to.
Yeah. Einstein followed the line of reasoning that began with the happiest thought of his life. Still at the Swiss Patent Office, he conducted one of his famous thought experiments. Einstein imagined a circle spinning in space. The center of the circle did not move, but its circumference was moving quickly in a circular direction. This is accelerated motion. It's important to remember that. Einstein compared what happens in several reference frames, a standard tool he used in developing the special relativity theory. He concluded, using his special relativity, that the boundary of the disk contracted as it spun. I underlined that. Underline that in your mind.
That's starting to sound very familiar, by the way.
Yeah.
I just want to point that out, that what we're seeing in the sky and what Einstein said is sounding very familiar.
Mm-hmm. There was a force acting on the circle at the boundary, the centrifugal force, and its action was analogous to that of the gravitational force, but the same contraction that affected the outer circle left the diameter unchanged. Thus, Einstein concluded in a way that surprised even him. The ratio of the circle to the diameter was no longer pi. He deduced, in the presence of a gravitational force, a field, the geometry of space was non-Euclidean. What he means there is it's bent, it's curved. And then came the whole theory of general relativity. But it comes from this thought, from this statement. He linked accelerated motion of particles, but in his time, he didn't know that the neutron and the proton had quarks in it. He was born too early. If he were born 50 years later, he'd have worked this out just like I did. Basically, I got my idea for what I did, my discovery, which comes here.
Oh, fantastic. Nice.
This is the way the quarks move inside of the neutron and proton. As you can see, it's a trefoil knot, the simplest knot known to man. And this explains what holds the neutron and the proton together, because they're moving at, remember I said 99% the speed of light.
Mm-hmm.
So they're not just particles anymore. It forms this whole structure, which is basically very rigid and solid, and it's precessing, it's spinning, and it's rolling. And so what you have at that great speed is a rapidly rotating precessing sphere. And so at the edge of this rotating precessing sphere, you have a contraction of space with no poles, just exactly what we see now. Gravity has no poles to it. This is why, because the poles that are there are moving and spinning. And so the whole spherical area is just a contraction. It's all moving toward that sphere, all around it in all directions. Perfect. Just what we needed to form the gravitational field. We now, thanks to the theory of super relativity, have the mechanical model, which I explain on my research paper.
Mm-hmm.
This is the central cause of gravity. This is how it works. And it's up to mankind to wake up and realize that. And that's why I'm on these shows trying to make that point, trying to make that case so that we can move forward. And from that discovery, the discovery that now we know that contraction of space causes gravity, causes mass. Now I came to the conclusion, well, then in order to make anti-gravity, we have to cause space to expand somehow. And that's when I started working on using the magnetic field, because I realized the magnetic field causes a stretching of space. So to prove that point to everyone who's listening, I don't know if you've ever played with silly putty. It's basically an elastic, right?
Right.
And it's basically a solid. Some people technically call it a liquid, but it's a very viscous solid. If you take that and you take that silly putty and you put it down on a comic strip and you got a nice picture there and you look at it, now twist it. Watch what happens as you twist the silly putty. You'll see the image stretching.
Mm-hmm. It contorts.
And that's exactly what you need in space to do, which is a quasi-elastic solid. Quasi meaning if you apply a field to it, like a magnetic field, and you remove it quickly, that space will snap back to a Euclidean geometry, which is a flat, non-bent thing. Put the magnetic field there, bends, and it snaps to the form of the field. Remove it, goes away again. Quasi. Elastic means you can deform it in small ways. You can twist it clockwise, you can twist it counterclockwise, you can stretch it, and you can compress it. That's all you can do with the solid. And elastic. And a solid means that which is continuous. So space is a continuous object. I don't mean a solid like metal or steel or iron. It's just something that's there everywhere, all pervasive. And so what we need to do basically is expand space, and the magnetic field does that, because a magnetic field is a rotation of space caused by moving charge. The charge is a vortex shape. They discovered that back in Maxwell's time. They unfortunately abandoned that model, but I revived it. So it's a torsion field. And when an electrostatic charge, which is a twist in space, moves, space rotates around the charge as it's moving. It's a reaction to the moving charge. The space is reacting by rotating as the twisted vortex shape of the electrostatic charge moves. And when that happens, space spreads out all around it. That's what we need to create the anti-gravity field, the magnetic field. And to back that up, I started, realizing over the years as a kid, I was reading all these things in UFO books about them discovering a magnetic field, a very powerful magnetic field around these spaceships. And that the Air Force would go out to some of these landing sites and they would bring a magnometer. A
Mm.
magnometer is a device that measures the strength of magnetic fields. Now, obviously, the US Air Force knows something that everybody else doesn't. They know that these UFOs emit strong magnetic fields. And
I
for
was,
years, I scratched my head about that.
I was just about to
And I
ask you
read
what sites would you be referring to that the Air Force had been going out to?
landing sites, supposed landing sites
Mm-hmm.
in general that were reported back in the 60s and the 50s and the 60s and so forth.
Right.
And they would go out to some of these and they would bring the magnometer and the other device, the X radiation, and I can't, the Geiger counter.
Okay.
But mainly the magnometer, and one of these things that I read when I was a kid, they said they picked some of the grass up and found that it was magnetized.
Mm.
This takes an immense magnetic field, and I've read many more reports where physicists examined a film that somebody took, the Belgian triangle, that guy pretty close to one of them took a picture of it in old-timey film, cameras with the emulsion and all,
Right.
not
Sure.
digital. And the physicist noticed that the emulsion was magnetized. It takes a very powerful magnetic field to do that, especially from the distance he was from that craft. Other physicists said they were looking at the UFOs with polarized lenses, and they saw a banding, another clear sign that there's a strong magnetic field. So what I'm backing up what I'm saying now with evidence that we have observed, so that we understand that this is the key to creating the magnetic field that will lead to anti-gravity field. And it does another thing that's very important, the magnetic field. It reduces permittivity and permeability in the area of the magnetic field. Why is that important? Remember, I told you the speed of light, c equals 1 over the square root of permittivity times permeability. Those are properties of space having to do with the way that space handles the electrostatic charge and the magnetic field.
Mm.
If those numbers reduce, if you work the equation out and you make those numbers smaller, the speed of light goes faster and faster. So if we can use the magnetic field around that ship and we strengthen it, we cause the permittivity and permeability to drop. That means we have a new speed of light. That means that spacecraft can go at any speed it wants to. So if we want to get to Proxima Centauri, 4.2 light years away, we need to go faster than the speed of light.
Sure.
We need
Because
to
of the
break the speed
distance.
of light by tens of thousands, let's say 50,000 times the speed of light. That reduces the time it takes to get there to just minutes. And that's what makes it practical. Makes it practical so that we can get to other star systems and we don't have to wait decades or centuries to get there. We can get there in 15 or 20 minutes, 30 minutes.
Amazing. That
This
is amazing.
This is the road. This is the way. It's the only way that I could think of using what technologies we have that we can build to get to other planets. And we have to do this because someday we're going to have to leave Earth.
I'm seeing that happening right now.
Later than sooner.
Yep.
But if we don't, we have to colonize. If we don't, we don't protect our species.
Mhm.
And we'll have to make an ark at some point and find a planet that's not heavily used, that's can support life. Maybe we can terraform it or whatever. But I'm sure the aliens are doing that. And what they're doing is, instead of living on the surface, they're living underground where we can't get to them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I definitely believe that. Yeah, not yet.
Yeah.
We have a question, and I'm sorry, I don't mean to
No,
break your
I'm
train of thought or
done.
anything. We have a question, and we only have maybe 2 minutes before the next break. So, Casper Parks would like to know if you have any thoughts on gravitational fields pertaining, I'm assuming, to this theory.
Yeah. In my paper, I describe, and in the book, the central cause of the gravitational field Gravity is caused by the accelerated motion of fundamental unbalanced charges. When charges move in this way, they cause space in and around the particle to contract. Gravity is a contraction of the spatial medium, of the ether. The ether is the fundamental field. So the unified field theory was all about finding the cause of gravity. Basically, the unified field theory is electromagnetism and gravity emerge as aspects of a single fundamental field. So in my book, in my theory, I reestablished that the ether does exist, and I prove that quite strongly within my book and within my paper, presenting all the massive amounts of evidence for the existence of the ether. And without it, the theory doesn't work. You have to have the fundamental field, and that fundamental field is the ether, and you have to cause it to bend. And for gravity, you have to cause it to contract. You have to change the metric, the actual distance or the density of that space. And there's evidence that that's exactly what the gravitational field does. It causes an increase in the density of space. And that's the answer to your question.
There you go, Casper. Amazing stuff. Gosh, we are already into our next hour. Can you believe that, Mark? It's going really super fast. About as fast as the speed of light. No, I'm just kidding. All right. So why don't we go ahead and take our next break. And when we come back, we'll get into some more super relativity with our guest tonight, Mark Fiorentino. This is Beyond the Strange. I'm your host, Dave Cruz. Don't go away. We got so much more to come up. Fascinating stuff. Be right back.
Hey, this is Deb, and you're listening to Dave Cruz on Beyond the Strange Radio.
I warn you, this could scare you, as the sound bothers me to listen to. It has always haunted me. What you're about to hear is very disturbing indeed.
I've seen the Martians eat.
What in heaven's name is it?
I don't know. Beyond the Strange.
Have you ever looked skyward and pondered UFOs, aliens, time travel, alternate universes, and parallel dimensions? Want to explore paranormal activities, ghost hauntings, various cryptoids, such as Bigfoot, sea, and lake monsters? Greetings, Beyonders. I'm author Casper Parks, and you are listening to Beyond the Strange with host Dave Cruz. Help spread the word by posting links in forums and social media. Available at Speaker.com, YouTube, and Google Hangouts.
All right, welcome back, everyone. This is Beyond the Strange. I'm your host, Dave Cruz. Thank you all for joining us tonight. We are speaking with our guest tonight, Mark Fiorentino, and Super Relativity, all the aspects that are going with it. Fascinating stuff, and I'm really, really just amazed and flabbergasted with a lot of this information, and this is so cool. So that's all I could say is this is really great. But you can learn more about Mark at www.super-relativity.com. Again, that's www.super-relativity.com. And again, I'd like to welcome Mark Fiorentino. Sorry about that. My lips just kind of stumbled upon each other, so I apologize.
Challenging word, that last name.
I think it's the coffee that's kind of doing that. But anyways, thanks again, Mark. This has been a fascinating hour so far, and we're going into our next hour. Also, I'd like to point out that we are going to have the phone lines open. Just put that in the chat. Phone line is 415-891-9083. Again, that number is 415-891-9083. And if you call in, don't panic. We'll pick it up. If we don't pick it up, just keep calling and we'll get it. So once again, that number is 415-891-9083. And Mark, is there any other websites or information that you want to give out to the audience so they can get to you faster?
Yeah, go to my YouTube website, please, and sign up there. And, I try to put these shows on there if they're agreeable to doing that as a central location where you could, go to see my interviews and so forth and get more information on the theory of super relativity. I consider it like these shows are beacons that I'm setting out on the internet to let the world know the solution for the unified field theory is here, the solution for anti-gravity is here, and we could build these starships. I believe we have the necessary knowledge and technology to do it now. We just need to bring it out of the secrecy of the US government and into mainstream so that we can have buses and trucks and vehicles that go to the moon is a commonplace thing. I imagine a world where we could go to the moon in 15 minutes and, have dinner at some moon base and look back at the Earth, or go to Tahiti. That's my fantasy, just to get in my hovercraft and program it to go to Tahiti and do it in 5 minutes or less.
I like that.
And without, having to spend 2 days in the airplane traveling halfway across the world, would be very nice thing, very beautiful thing, a utopian world, certainly, where we could travel freely anywhere, and not just on the Earth, but within the galaxy or the universe.
So let's talk a little bit about how important anti-gravity, especially, and, what this theory can mean. I remember, it's probably been about at least 10 years, how they were talking about these super trains that hover above the rail through magnetism, and it cuts the friction so that it can actually move so much faster. That's what I think about when I think of like anti-gravity and spacecrafts, how much faster these, or not even spacecraft, but just, crafts in general that can just move and zip so much faster because there's no friction, there's no gravity.
Well, it's not anti-gravity, it's just magnetic levitation.
There you go.
It's just, they're using the like poles to make a repulsive force that holds up, takes very powerful magnets, obviously electromagnets, to do that. Because the train is very heavy.
Sure.
But all I need is just a little fraction of an inch or so. I don't know how much they actually achieve with it. But the bigger the gap, the safer, obviously. But you don't want the train actually hitting the
That'd be
metal.
bad.
And I have never really looked at the construction. Maybe they still use wheels or whatever to, just in case there's a bump in the road somewhere and it, hits for an instant. But basically, it's magnetic levitation. Yeah, that's about as frictionless as you're ever going to get, skating along on a magnetic field, a repulsive magnetic field. But what I'm saying is, with anti-gravity, you cancel, or you can use the magnetic field to actually cancel and block the effects of gravity underneath you, so that your ship becomes weightless. It could literally float. I don't care how heavy it is, how large it is. If you have that right field configuration surrounding it, that ship will not only will it not feel the gravity underneath it, not be attracted or pulled down, but it also cancels inertia. And that's very important, that you cancel inertia in that kind of spacecraft. Because if you didn't, and you made maneuvers at, let's say, as these UFOs do, 10,000, 15,000 miles an hour, and then suddenly
It'd
make
be
a
a
right
grease
turn.
spot.
Yeah, everybody would die. But if
Yeah.
you're inside of the slip wave, you don't feel a thing. If you had no windows, you'd have no idea you're moving at all. You'd be
Right.
floating there, moving with the spaceship at that speed, and it changes direction, and you feel no inertia. And it has to be this way, or everybody dies.
Yeah.
So the system is perfect. It does everything it needs to do in order for you to go these ridiculously high rates of speed. And you need that when you break the light speed barrier, because there's going to be Lorentz transformation effects once you get close to the speed of light that we don't normally feel at the low speeds that we go at. But if you get at 99% of the speed of light and you look at what happens to that ship really physically, which I know physicists will argue with me about, but what I have determined is that ship will be contracted. That ship's mass will increase to very near infinite. And these things are not healthy for the occupants, because the ship is moving that fast, so are you. And that's going to cause a problem. And you need a way to cancel that, all those effects. And the way to do it is using the slip wave, because as long as you're in there inside of that slip wave field, it's as if you're not moving at all. Even time dilation doesn't affect you there. Time actually moves slightly faster when you're in this field, instead of slowing down as you would if got toward near the speed of light, or at the speed of light, your clock would stop. And so these things would make it impossible for us to build a ship to go break the light speed barrier if we used any kind of propulsion other than the one I described. If you use rockets, let's say you could, which we can't, but if you could build a rocket powerful enough to get us up to the speed of light, everybody would die in that ship as it approached the speed of light. Your blood wouldn't be able to pump. Your ship would be flattened to a pancake. Very unpleasant. You have to be inside of the slip wave. You have to decrease the density of space around your ship so that you don't feel inertia and you don't have the effects of the Lorentz transformations of contraction of length, increase in mass, and time dilation. These have to be canceled out. And again, the slip wave comes to the rescue and solves all those problems at the same time and allows you to break the light speed barrier. It's, as far as I'm concerned, it's intelligent design. This all works this way. A creator had to come up with this scheme so that the people on this planet and other planets are not just stranded on their one planet. They're free to go to other worlds and learn about other things and prolong their species by establishing it's part of the process here in this physical universe. We have to get off this planet and bilocate somewhere else. And this is the technology that will allow us to do this and make sure we're not exterminated by some horrific event like an asteroid hitting us or, something even worse than that.
Funny you mentioned that, because I was just watching a show, and there's been plenty of disaster movies that have to do with asteroids, comets, whatever you want to call it, a heavenly body, if you will, hurling towards Earth and space. The movie it's called Don't Look Up. It's on Netflix right now. And what happens in that movie is two physicists find that there is a comet coming towards Earth, and they're trying to explain it to the government, to the president, and everybody. And not only is it the president. I'm sorry, if these are spoiler alerts, people. So if you haven't watched the movie yet, plug your ears for a second. So put your fingers in your ear. But the bottom line is that people are trying to explain this to the government, and the government are just like taking this like, no way, it can't happen, whatever, blah blah blah. And the only way that they start actually taking notice is because another person comes in who's like some kind of CEO of, let's say a computer company that we all know about, and comes in and says, hey, there's minerals and all kinds of, precious metals and that kind of thing on this comet. So maybe we can just break it apart and pick up some of the pieces, because otherwise it'd be a disastrous event. And yeah, I mean, I see the need to try to find other places for us to go. And I believe a lot of the elites, on this planet, and the governments of the world have been trying for years, not just recently. I think they've been trying for years. And I think they've even maybe succeeded in some ways. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I certainly think our government has, but we need a space defense system, and I propose that in the book
Mm-hmm.
for this particular problem, blocking the comets and the asteroids. And I have a very easy solution to that. We can do it. We have most of the technology now. We photograph wide image photographs or wide view perspective photographs of the sky every night. We look for movement in the lights, anything coming toward us, deep space radar. We got the monitoring technology and the computer analysis and everything. We could keep an eye and track everything that's moving out there. Anything big or dangerous that's coming toward us, we should know many, many months in advance. And if we go ahead and admit that we can build anti-gravity crafts, we could build anti-gravity drones. We could use those drones in mass to go to the asteroid or comet and just land on it, and then use the reverse thrusters and then push it. Just push it out of the way safely. You don't need to nuke it, which probably won't work anyway if it's sufficiently large. Nuking it probably won't work. You just need to change its direction. And if you land thousands of these things, these drones that I proposed onto this asteroid, you could put it in an Earth orbit if you wanted to mine it or whatever, or you could just shove it and let it go into the sun and be the end of it. So we can prevent that natural disaster, which happens every few 100 million years. Ask the dinosaurs about it. They got wiped out twice from one. That could happen any day. We could go to bed tonight, and in the middle of the night, on the other side of the world, one hits, we feel a shake and a rumble, and the next thing you know, there's fire in the sky, and there's giant tidal waves, and billions of people get wiped out in a matter of hours. The sad fact is, this is possible at any day. Is it probable? No, but it is possible.
Right.
And if we don't have a defense system set up, which I'm proposing we do, that's why we need to get this technology out there so that everybody, all these major companies out there, can start building these things so we'll have that defense available. We could also use this drone technology to build what I call Project Sunshade.
Mhm.
This would be very valuable in reducing the global warming problem. The best way to do that is just to block the sun to a certain amount, maybe cut it back by 2%. We can drop the Earth's temperature by 1 degree centigrade.
Let me.
That would put it back. Yeah, go ahead.
I'm sorry. Let me just cut in for a second. You said Project Sunshade. Is this a project that's already in process, or is this a project that you're proposing?
Yes,
Really?
I'm proposing it. Project Sunshade, you use the drones again. Well, we have to have that, technology. The government has to stop blocking us from building it and discovering it. And, we just got to work in a cooperative so that we can start building these drones. And these drones go up into outer space. They take panels. They could be just, a plastic or some sort of metal, or they could be the type of stuff that we use. What do they call it? Solar cells, and we could generate power and then put it back to Earth. But it's like a system where you got blinds. You open and close them. We send the signal from into outer space, and they close. Maybe 30% or 40 or 50 or whatever, or 100.
Mhm.
And we shade an area of the Earth. Probably a good place to be doing that would be Hurricane Alley, so that not only could we shade the planet, we could kill a hurricane before it gets bad
That would be great.
and protect the people.
That would
So
be
we
great.
could shade it as it's going across Hurricane Alley. And if we do this up to like 2%, like I say, to start, we can moderate the global warming problem and, by affecting the climate directly.
Yeah, that's interesting that that this came up, that this topic of global warming and trying to cool the Earth off, because I just did a show last month about I'm not sure if you're familiar with the term chemtrails, these clouds in the sky that are caused by these chemical trails that are left either by aircraft or drones, rockets, whatever you want to call it. There's plenty of ways that these chemicals get into the sky. And what happens is they start off as a trail and then they start to expand. And a lot of people believe that this is a way that has been controlling weather, and it has been using it as a weapon as well. The different countries of the world. But there's also some people who propose to do the same thing that you just mentioned about cooling the Earth off, although they want to put particles in our air, in our sky, that don't fall down. To according to them, they'll stay up. But as far as I'm concerned, anything that comes up or goes up must come down, and that way it cools off the Earth. And so I am not for that at all.
Well, that's what happens when volcanoes go off. They put up so much particles, they cloud the sky,
Exactly.
and they basically block and send this into an ice age, which has
Exactly.
happened in the past. Not saying that solution wouldn't work, but it's hard to control. You could go too far, and then all of a sudden we're in an ice age, and that's going to give people a lot of problems.
I'd have to say so.
My system, you can control it. If 100% blockage over 2% is too much and gets too cold, well, we can just send a signal and only block 50%. We could in an instant, we could change the settings so that it's just enough, not too much. And if we have to open it up for some reason, we can go flat and they'll get 100% solar transfer back to the Earth. So it's a solution that you can change it, you can modify it, which is what you want. You just put particles. This is a blunt kill. You just want to throw out particles, and then you don't have any way of getting rid of them. If the,
Exactly.
and how else will these particles, are they, do they have a pH that's acid? Then will we get acid rain from them? I mean, there's a lot of things to consider. Or do they have some other pollutant that we don't know about that's going to kill off who knows how many species? It's not a, doesn't sound like a good solution.
No,
I
and not to
definitely
mention it
like,
gets into our water system and not, our
yeah,
rain system and ecosystem and that's to me not a good
we
thing.
have to be careful with implementing, they've
Yeah,
done things like this in the past, and now we have killer bees and all kinds of other, kudzu and all these other things that are messing up the environment locally in areas. We introduce something to get rid of something else, and then the next thing you know, it's taking over and making a new problem.
right.
So, any project like this that's global, you got to give it a lot of thought, and you got to have a solution that you can do to back things up, just in case something goes wrong. That's why I like Project Sunshape, because you just send a signal, and you can modify the amount of sunlight that gets here until you get that happy, just right, zone of comfort.
I definitely am for your idea over the chemtrails idea. That's for sure. Um, we have about 4 minutes before we go to our last break. And again, I just want to put out there for anybody who wants to call in, you want to talk, have any questions, you want to talk to Mark, or just, you have a comment. That phone number again is 1-415-891-9083. That phone number is 1-415-891-9083. It's in the chat room as well. And we got a couple minutes. So if someone wants to, do a drive-by call, please do. Otherwise, we're going to just keep going until we go to our next break. So we don't again, we only got like a couple minutes for a break, but I just want to say, is time travel possible? And I'm going to say yes, according to everything we've been talking about tonight.
Yeah. Yeah, it's possible. I write about time in the book, explaining how it happens in this universe, and it has a physical mechanical connection, even though time itself does not really exist. In other words, you
I've heard
can't
that.
hold like a 50 cents worth. You can't hold, I have 15 minutes in my hand, I'm holding it. There's no such thing. Time doesn't really exist. There's just the experience of time in this universe. And we live in a time segment. And in order for there to be time travel, the trick is this one thing has to be true. All time is occurring at the same moment in parallel. If that's true, which is what near-death people say is true, then time travel is possible. And from what I've researched, I believe that the US government, starting in the mid to late 40s, came up accidentally with a method for time travel. And they have modified that research and moved forward. And now I think they probably have a full-blown Stargate, which not only allows you to travel interdimensionally, but also through time.
Well, do you think any of this technology was created before some of our civilizations? Like I'm talking about like past civilizations that have been talked about, like let's say Atlantis, that could have possibly had some of this technology already?
It's possible. We still haven't really discovered Atlantis, or if we have, I'm sure it would be covered up.
Right.
Because the government does not want us knowing there's other advanced technologies, such as whatever they had. They want to keep that all, from Tesla all the way out to the Philadelphia experiment and the Montauk project. They're going to keep all this stuff experimental and quiet and secret, because they want, total control over it. And if we were to discover something like if we were to even catch a Bigfoot, I'm sure they would come in and say, hey, let us examine that. Bigfoot would disappear and then you'd never hear about it again. Because
Exactly.
maybe Bigfoot's an alien. You know, they seem to be able to show up here and there, but never leave any traces.
I have
So
thought
it's
about that.
yeah, it's a possibility that there's a connection between UFOs or interdimensional travel and Bigfoot, Sasquatch, Yeti, whatever you want to call them. But anything unusual, you know, hey, let me see that sample of that spacecraft. We'll analyze it and get back to you, and you never hear a thing again. Oh, we don't have anything like that. You call them up and ask them, we don't have any records of this. You know, you've given us this, and it disappears. And so this is why we don't have evidence.
Right. Well,
very
you know,
frustrating.
you'd be lucky if they even hear about you. They hear about you again. So, you know, talk about cover-ups. We are speaking with Mark Fiorentino and Super Relativity, and it's, man, I'm loving this show so much. This has been a fascinating show so far. We're going to take our last break, and we'll be right back. This is Beyond the Strange. I'm your host, Dave Cruz. Do not go away. We've got a lot more coming. Welcome back, everyone. This is Beyond the Strange. I'm your host, Dave Cruz. Tonight we are speaking with author Mark Fiorentino, and we're speaking about Super Relativity, his book, Master of Reality. And we've been talking so much about lots and lots of theories and experiments and possibly time travel. And it's definitely possible, according to Mark. And again, his book is Master of Reality. And you can go to www.super-relativity.com. And once again, I just want to say thank you so much for being on the show. And man, it's been a fascinating topic and evening so far. Once again, Mark Fiorentino, thank you again for being on the show tonight, sir.
Welcome. It's good to be here and talking about time. In my book, I definitely go into the Stargate technology, which was guided to me because I wasn't going to write about that, and it was suggested by a medium friend of mine that this technology does exist and people need to know about it. So I did research and found some of the things that she said actually existed, like fractal lenses. And when I got into that, I've never heard of a fractal lens. Have you ever heard of a fractal lens?
I've heard of fractals, but I haven't heard of a fractal lens.
Yeah, fractals. Yeah, everybody knows about the little fractal thing.
Mm-hmm.
But a fractal lens is, turns out that's made of a metamaterial. And you, as a UFO guy, you may be familiar with metamaterials.
Mm-hmm.
Well, they have some unique properties. And if a spaceship is built, the UFO, which they found some of them are, at least that's what the claim is, it makes sense in two different ways why they would use a metamaterial in the hull of the spacecraft. Because here on Earth, I've studied up on it from ResearchGate, and I found that light travels infinitely fast inside of a metamaterial because the metamaterial does what I talked about earlier. It reduces the properties of permittivity and permeability to zero, which means if you do that and you calculate Maxwell's equation, if permittivity and permeability are zero, that means the speed is infinitely fast, which is an uncomfortable thing to think about. But that's their claim. It's on ResearchGate. And the material scientists claim that they have set up a material that can do this. Well, using this in the frame of a Stargate would be very handy because you can accelerate electromagnetic energy in this frame coming out. Let's say, you know how the Stargate looks on a TV show. So if you have the frame and it's made of this fractal lens material, the light coming out of that will be extremely compressed. And that's what you need to create ultra high frequencies that are going to make the space in and around that area vibrate very fast. And if you use it in conjunction with high frequency sound, you can make that area, you could create a portal in theory. And then this could get you to another dimension or another time based on what frequency you're using. You could tune this thing like a radio. And that's what I talk about in my book. So I do believe that's probably what they're doing now.
Super amazing information. That, but that does make sense that there would be, I mean, I don't think right now we have any of that kind of material for us to do that sort of time travel.
No, well, no, but
not
that
right
application,
now.
That application is not thought of by people who are making the materials they're using in other technologies.
Right.
Sure, it's very handy for all kinds of things, but and I'm not all that familiar with the other applications that they're making the material for.
Sure.
But if you put it in a spacecraft, it'll allow that spacecraft to glide through space a lot easier. It'll also allow you to, that's a good indication that that spacecraft is using a higher technology than what I'm talking about, and that they jump through space directly by going through a dimensional portal. And they use this in conjunction with either magnetic fields or some other energy field that allows them to break through the dimensional barrier and shortcut through space. You would call it like a wormhole, but it's not really.
That's where I was going. That's exactly where I was going to go. We do have a caller, Mark, as a matter of fact.
Oh, okay, good.
Yeah. So I would just like to say welcome, caller, to Beyond the Strange. You're on with Mark Fiorentino.
Oh, hey, Dave. Hey, Mark. This is Carl from Black Shaft Paranormal. How are you guys doing tonight?
Carl, good to hear from you, buddy. Happy New Year.
Yeah, Happy New Year to you, too. I just had a really quick question. I've just been intrigued with the thought of, like, planetary travel or whatever, and I know we were talking about it earlier, as far as, like, flying at the speed of light as opposed to, something like wormholes or whatever. The whole sci-fi community is kind of like, big on wormholes or whatever, but you're saying that we could actually, do it the hard way and fly there, from point A to point B in like, 15, 20 minutes. The way I always heard wormholes explained, and correct me if I'm wrong, but if you took a piece of paper and you had point A on one side of the piece of paper and point B on the other side of the paper, and you folded the paper in half and made them touch, that's basically a wormhole is. So what you were saying earlier is that we can actually do it the hard way and, just make a road trip and just fly straight through from point A to point B without folding the paper. Again, you know more about this than I do. Just, if you could elaborate on that a little bit, I'd appreciate it.
Yep, that's
Yeah.
kind of what I was going to get to also as well, Mark.
Okay. The wormhole, which is very popular, is a very speculative theory as well. I'm sure they would call my theory very speculative, but that theory is also speculative. And if you look at it,
Right.
they have embraced an idea, the wormhole, the shortcut bending of space. Well, if you're going to bend space like that, there has to be a force involved. Space isn't going to bend on its own. And that force is the gravitational field. That's the one that's going to do this trick. So you're going to have to create an immense gravitational field, much stronger than the Earth, much stronger than the sun's, equivalent to something like a black hole. These wormholes theoretically or somehow work out in a black hole. And it's according to my theory on what black holes are made of, there's no wormhole inside of it. It's made of solid neutronium. You're not going anywhere but hitting the surface of something incredibly dense with an immense gravitational field. There's no wormhole to anywhere else. And so if you were somehow magically able to do that, and I could think of a way of doing it using the slip wave technology, and you could create it just like they suggest. At the front of the ship, they want to collapse space to make the wormhole. At the back of the ship, you're pushing. There's a repulsive force going. That would be the anti-gravity field, driving right into an incredibly immense gravitational field, which will allow the effects of inertia and all the other things to go wrong. That ship would be destroyed instantly if you did that. And the way you could do it is extend the front part of the ship out of the slip wave. So it's exposed to ordinary space, but moving fast or faster than the speed of light. It would be a catastrophe. There would be only one trip. It would be over quickly, and they would realize, oh, that's not going to work. You just have to use a repulsive field that expands the space on the back part of the ship. And what it does is it reduces the metric of space inside of the area to almost nothing. So it's like the ship, as it's moving, it's almost going through no space at all, mathematically speaking. So the distance is shortened between wherever you're going and wherever you are, because the whole time you're moving through the slipway, which is almost no space at all because it's thinned out and expanded so much. So it makes sense. and it's an entry level technology I'm describing for advanced civilizations. This is the first thing we use or they use to get out there. I am sure there are more advanced ones, but I don't believe they use a wormhole. They use either this technology or they use interdimensional with a Stargate technology, which can get you here and there in like instantaneous amounts of time.
Right.
Very handy.
Which we've all heard
like,
about.
we don't know about, we don't know about, if there are other, we know there's aliens out there at this point, but we don't know what their technology is. They could be millennia ahead of us.
Oh yeah,
I mean,
millions, more than millennia.
not
Millions
even
of
thousands
years.
of years, millennia.
Yeah, millions of years ahead of us. And I've talked to some people that claim to have been abducted just to hear about the technologies and what they go through. Not only can they travel faster than speed, but they can go through solid objects. I talked to Susie Hansen, who's an abductee, and she claims that they took a shortcut one time to get her back to her home, and they went right through the middle of the earth. Now that's a pretty tricky technology right there.
Yeah, it is.
That's like godlike compared to what we know and do. I mean, how do they do that?
Again, it's like showing a lightsaber to a caveman. I mean, like it's something we might not literally be able to comprehend right now, but yeah, that makes sense.
Well, some of their technology, all these, the grays and so forth, is their interface is psychic. They can connect and control their spacecraft with their minds, which has a whole nother aspect.
Right.
How much of their technology is psychic based or biologically based? There's claims of people that say some of these starships are biological in nature. I don't even know how to conceive of how that could work. That's so far ahead. Yeah, that's so far ahead.
It might be something we can't physically conceive as human beings. Like we just literally can't wrap our brains around it. Like they're just so far ahead of us.
We'd have to have them sit here. If we can get out there and meet these people, we could learn. That's one of the benefits of being able to talk to the aliens. They probably happily share the technology with us as long as we don't blow them up, which is a real threat, and why they might want to inhibit us from that. Because if we get that technology, because
totally
this is what we do.
We're generally horrible human beings.
We're very warlike, and we are probably more of a threat than they are.
We've got
if they wanted to wipe us out, they would have done it by now.
Yeah, we've got a long way to go.
All they have to do is push an asteroid at us. We'd never know it hit us. And there's no way right now we could stop it.
At least not that we know of. Not yet.
Well, look how many thousands of years they've been seeing UFOs up there, ancient aliens, all this stuff. And they've been around for tens of thousands of years, maybe more. And they haven't destroyed us yet. So I would say it's a pretty safe bet that they're not really hostile. If they are, they're not doing a very good job of it.
I mean, it's kind of one of the things that they almost consider us inferior. Like they're just observing us. Like, let's see what these guys do. But yeah, if we were a threat to them at all, something good or bad would have happened by now. Like they're just observing us at this point.
I want to say that they did take notice when Hiroshima went off, because it does seem when Hiroshima the bomb was dropped.
Okay,
I believe that's when E.T. finally took notice, really, and took us kind of serious, just to see what's going on over here.
They probably had nukes 2,000 years or more before that. Like all these guys finally got nukes. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's
It's
what I
like-
mean is now they're like, okay, these guys aren't playing around. They're basically, they know enough to be a danger. So, but yeah, that's it's amazing stuff right now that's going on. Carl, thanks for calling in, buddy. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Oh, no problem. Thanks for having me, guys. Have a good night, Dave and Mark. And thanks
Okay.
for answering my questions. Appreciate it.
Absolutely, buddy. Anytime. Have a good one.
All right, you too. Bye.
That's Carl, everybody. He was into the show. He's also a paranormal investigator, and yeah, it's good questions, very good questions.
Mhm.
Mark, we
good.
never even got into your near-death experience. So before you go,
I
we
wanna
got to
clear
talk about
up.
that.
I did not have a near-death experience, but
Okay.
in my book, I talk about near-death experience.
My apologies.
Yeah, a lot of people make that mistake because I do clearly mention it in my bio and so forth. But this is what was discovered from a near-death experiencer.
Gotcha.
And her name is Linclair Dennis.
Mhm.
She has the Marion Group. I found her because of Einstein, actually. He said, I want to know how God created the world. I am not interested in this or that phenomena in the spectrum or this or that element. I want to know his thoughts. The rest are details. When I thought about that, I said, hey, he wants to read God's mind. That's a novel idea.
Yeah.
That's not a bad idea because he's the creator. And if you want to know how something works, just ask the creator of that something. That's always what I did when I was at IBM and my other jobs as a troubleshooter. I'd go to the guy that wrote that program or created that card assembly or whatever, and I asked him, we have this failure. How does this thing work? And I'd learn about it. So if you want to know how something works, you want to know how the universe works, go to God. So I figured, well, since I can't do that without dying, I thought, well, maybe somebody who had a near-death experience did, because I'm looking for something. I'm looking for what
Great
Einstein
idea.
was looking for.
Mhm.
I'm looking for the dynamical geometry, which was this trefoil knot, which this lady saw, had a near-death experience while flying over the Alps in a hot air balloon, lost her oxygen, and they had to drop quickly and then revive her. And after she came back, she reported all this things. She saw this pattern, and which then I contacted them and said, I think I know what this means because it's the same pattern that I was looking for. It is composed of three elements, which is the key thing I was looking for, and described what it meant, which backed up was in her book, The Pattern, where she says at this time she believed that it was some sort of creator or something who was describing how the universe worked via this pattern of motion, this geometry, and with all the platonic solids were around it, the sphere, everything I'm talking about. And we went our separate ways, but thanks to this NDE, which I decided to search for,
Mhm.
to find this dynamical geometry, the idea comes from Einstein. These things are all linking together to make a discovery. And it was done through an NDE, thinking to myself, I says, perhaps God wants to pass us a message. Maybe he'll send it through an NDE experiencer. So I'm going to go look for it. And I spent a couple weeks reading countless amounts looking for anybody who saw a dynamical geometry composed of three elements. And I actually found it. And this was the lady. And then I realized this was describing the quarks, the quark motion inside of the neutron and proton. So that's how I have an NDE connection in my book.
Very fascinating. And it's that kind of inspiration, I believe, that so many people have made amazing discoveries, because of either a near-death experience or even a life after death experience. Tesla was supposedly, in contact with, the ether, and or Edison as well, as a matter of fact. There's so many stories about that. Actually, Tesla was in contact with ET. Edison was in contact with the spirit world, from what I understand. So yeah, there's countless stories about the beyond, if you will, where people have gotten the inspiration. I want to ask you, do you have the patent for your slip drive?
No, I don't have a patent. I'm going to do experiments to prove it. The problem is you patent an idea like this, and they're watching the patents, the government. So that triggers a response. And there's at least 1,000 or so patents, mainly having to do with free energy or super efficient power systems and so forth. Once these things show up,
right,
they're contacted and they're either bought off or they're warned, be quiet. And so I'm not going to attempt a patent, especially for anti-gravity, because that triggers usually bad things.
I understand. Yeah, I get what you're saying.
I just want to get it out there and spread the word. And if I have to myself, do some experiments to verify it. And I'm still trying to figure out a way to introduce it safely and in a way that it can be confirmed, because there's others that have, like Ling Ni and Ning Li, I think, and Potklinov, who have already kind of discovered anti-gravity, but it just got shoved under the rug, either through payoffs or through being discredited, which is another technique they use a lot.
Yes.
To silence the people. There's a variety of ways. I just want to do what I was tasked to do before I was born, and to bring this world needs it, and I peacefully and in a loving manner want to introduce this technology, make it known that it's here, and help mankind start building starships so that we can be safe and we can advance and create a utopian world. So I'm not really against anybody. I'm not against the government. I'm not against any people. I'm for everyone. And this is for everyone. This technology that I propose is for everyone to have and to use in a peaceful way. That's what my goal is here. And I'll go as far as I can go and do what I got to do to get that done. And this, being on shows like this, is part of that process, part of that adventure we're all sharing tonight, the adventure, this grand adventure of bringing this good technology to the world. So I don't think I'm going to go the patent route, but who knows, unless somebody advises me otherwise that it's really a great idea and somehow can back that up, I probably won't.
I understand where you're going with that. I really do. But before you go, Mark, I'd really like for you to let the audience know again where they can find everything that's you.
Sure. www.super-relativity.com. That's my main website. On that page, there's a list of buttons going down on the right side that take you to the key places, my blog, to buy my book online and so forth. At Amazon, you can get it. And go to YouTube, my YouTube, subscribe to my YouTube site. That helps me greatly. That will keep you up to date on my latest shows that I can put up there. I put up there, and it's a central location for you to see my presentations and so forth.
Fantastic. Mark, it's been a pleasure to speak with you, and please come back. We've got so much more to discuss that we didn't get into. And would love to have you back on the show.
Sure. We'd love to. It'd be great.
Fantastic. I really appreciate it. Again, tonight we spoke with author Mark Fiorentino. His book is Master of Reality. You can find the links on Beyond the Strange as well on the BeyondTheStrange.com. And thank you again, sir, for a great evening. Have a good night. If you want, just stick around while we close the show. So, co-executive producer is Deb J. Cruz. Disclaimer and voice work by Casper Parks. Visit CasperParks.com. Executive producer and creator of Beyond the Strange is Dave Cruz. Music by Alan Hall and Zebra Fish. This beginning disclaimer is by Casper Parks once again. And I want to thank everyone reposting on Twitter and Facebook. Thank you all so much for coming out tonight. It's been a great evening. Again, beginning of the year. Happy New Year. Looking forward to an awesome year. And everyone stay safe. But remember, stay strange. Hasta.